members, officers, and members of the public who may well be watching us as we are being live streamed. I think once again, members are aware how this works. I think we should be used to it by now, but I am going to, for the first part, call out your names to see whether you're here. That is the members of the actual planning committee. So I do know there are other people wish to speak and so forth. So if I may start with, say, if you're here, please, Councillor Coleman Cook.
Sorry about that. Here, Chair.
I often wonder about that. Councillor Steve Alban.
Yeah, here, Chair.
Councillor Joe Bayford.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Alan Curry.
Here, Chair.
Councillor John Dennis.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Pat Moore. Councillor Moore, that's Pat Moore. Councillor Mike Garner.
I'm here, Chair.
Councillor David Hart.
I'm sorry for him. Cedric.
Thank you, Cedric. Yes, I will come to that under apologies. Thank you for that, though. Councillor Heather Keane.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Paul Moore.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Matthew Scott. I am aware that he will be a few minutes late because of his work schedule. Councillor George Roseski.
Present, Chair.
Welcome. Just very quickly, I know you've taken over from Councillor Taylor, or Gary Taylor, who has left the council, and I'd just like to say I know he found it difficult with the rescheduling of planning, but his dedication to the work he did was what I saw, and I'm sure other members, and we've read it, I know, but it was excellent, and this will be a sad loss to the authority. Councillor Linda Wright.
Here, Chair.
And I am, so thank you for that, members. Right, as always, a little bit of housekeeping, if I may. If you have any technical difficulties during the meeting, then please contact Democratic Services on call, who will be there to attempt to assist you. Today's officer is Charles, and his number is 577186. That number will go in the chat box, and it will be included, in the chat box for your convenience. I would ask participants to mute your microphones when you are not speaking to minimise background noise, and will help everyone in the meeting listen to the proceedings. Microphones must only be on if the participant has been granted permission to speak. To gain permission, please put a notification in the chat box on your right, and please wait until the other person has finished speaking. Would everybody present please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and that they are not used to make or receive phone calls whilst this meeting is in progress. Please also refrain from checking emails or conducting any other business, and ensure that you are in a quiet room free from distractions for the duration of this meeting. And again, just to remind you that this meeting is being live streamed on the authority's YouTube channel. Now to appoint members, which I'm sure you are aware now. I know this will be brought up at full council next Thursday, but today we've heard of the sad loss of, I think, and I know many do, an unbelievable councillor, and that's Peter Campbell. He fought hard with cancer, and I understand it wasn't just the cancer. He got COVID as well. This happened last night. It has been made public, so I'm not saying anything I shouldn't be saying to any of you. At this meeting, I would prefer for nobody to comment, leave that to the proper place, which will be full council, as I say, next Thursday. I think we all feel sadness, and our regards go to his family at this very sad time. And if we can just bow our heads just for a moment, please. Thank you, members. And as I say, I'm sure we'll all have an opportunity, those who wish to say a few words at full council. Right, moving on with the agenda, members requesting to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. I have Councillor Pugh of 4C, land south of Orchard House, Sheriff's Court Lane, Ramsgate. Councillor Rogers, 4E, Sportsman Inn, 123 Sandwich Road, Ramsgate. Also, Councillor Rattigan, 4E, Sportsman Inn, 123 Sandwich Road. I believe Councillor Bob Bayford wishes to speak on item 4D, if that has been confirmed. I don't know if Councillor Bob is there.
I'm here, Chair.
Thank you. If members could make a note of that. Thank you very much. I have received agenda item 1. I have received apologies from Councillor Hart, and that he has been substituted by Councillor Towning. Are there any more apologies?
Hello,
Okay.
Chair. I'd just like to say Councillor Pat Moore has joined.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Curry. Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Moore. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest at all? Don't hear anything or see anything. Agenda item 3, approving the minutes. Do members agree that the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 20th of January be approved? Could I have a proposer, please?
I'll propose that, Chair.
Chair, Councillor Olszewski.
Thank you,
Chair,
Councillor.
Councillor Alban.
And seconded by Councillor Orban. Do you all agree?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, schedule of planning applications and public speaking. Site visits, once again, as you're fully aware, still cannot take place until all of us get out of this crazy situation we're all in, and to be safe, staying safe. The following items have been reserved for public speaking, so if you could make a note of this. Agenda items 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D and 4E. Thank you. Now I'm going over to a point of information, and if our planning and applications manager, Mr. Livingston, would give us an update on 2 items. Ian, if you're there, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just an update on 2 specific agenda items. So on agenda item 4C, which is the land south of Orchard House, Sheriff's Court Lane, Ramsgate. So subsequent to the publishing of the agenda, we've received a signed and completed unilateral undertaking, which satisfies the requirement for mitigation towards the special protection area in line with policy SP 29. And therefore, on that application, the second recommended reason for refusal is being removed from the officer recommendation. However, the recommendation remains the same, which is for refusal on the now sole reason that's put forward by officers. The second item is really to follow up the email that I sent to members last week, which is about agenda item 4D, which is Kingsgate College, Convent Road, Broadstairs. I raised a point of information about an error in the committee report, which states that the proposal is a departure from policy H01. So policy H01 of the new local plan provides a list of sites where housing will be granted, as well as the principle that on non-allocated sites within the urban and village confines, that proposals for residential development will be granted subject to meeting all other relevant policy criteria. And therefore, whilst the proposal is not in accordance with that policy, but as the policy doesn't explicitly state that no residential development will be allowed outside the urban confines, it doesn't represent a departure from that policy. So it's an important technical point there. When proposals are outside the village and urban confines, they need to be considered against policy SP24, which concerns development in the countryside, and also any site-specific designations. And in this instance, it's the consideration against SP25, which is concerning the green wedges in Thanet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that information, Ian. Okay, moving on to agenda item 4A, which is 179 Percy Avenue, Broadstairs. I will ask Suki to read out a statement she has with a person who is objecting to this application. Suki.
Thank you, Chair. This is a statement in objection from Mr. Baker. Firstly, we would just like to say that we fully understand why our neighbours, Chris and Maxine, would like to go ahead with the extension, and that we only want to ensure that alterations made work out to be the best for both properties. Here are the matters we would just like raised. The height of the terrace. Both properties at present have gardens which are significantly lower than the ground floor of the properties and are accessed by steps going down. We are concerned that the proposed neighbouring terrace from the extension will be too high and afford us a loss of privacy of an area of our garden, which currently cannot be easily viewed from the neighbouring property. We understood from our neighbours that the original plans showed an extension to the terrace by 2 metres was not what was intended. The revised plans still show the 2-metre patio extension, which means that most people standing on this will be head and shoulders above fence level. Loss of light. We still feel the height and proximity of the proposed extension will significantly obscure our dining room bay window with regards to light and sky, which currently enhances the character of the room. Privacy screens on balcony. The revised plans do not indicate the materials proposed for the privacy screens, and we would appreciate the chance to discuss what these are made from, as they will affect our property as much as next door. Thank you for listening to this statement.
Thank you, Suki. I will now ask Planning Officer, which is Annabelle, to outline this application, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen. Hopefully members can see my screen.
We can.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the application site, 179 Percy Avenue, outlined in red as usual. We have 177A to the bottom of the application site, and the adjoining property is 181. Excuse me. Consent is sought for the erection of a single-storey rear extension with a balcony at first floor level, also to the rear, and alterations to the existing raised patio area. So just to show you some photographs of the site, this is the rear of the application site, central to the photograph here. This is 181 Percy Avenue, 177A on the right-hand side. So looking at the relationship between the application site and 177A, which sits to the right here, we can see that 177A has an existing extension here. And this is looking the other way with a better view of the relationship between 179, which is the application site, and 181 to the left of the photograph here. This block plan is got obviously 179 centrally here. The sort of shaded orange area that you can see here relates to actual built form. So that would be the extension here, and the balcony with the dotted line separating it would exist in this location here, which is the same size of the existing canopy that we've just seen in the photographs. And here we can see the terraced area, which would project some 2 metres beyond the proposed extension. So we have the existing rear and proposed rear elevations of the properties. So we can see the canopy and arrangement and the bay window on the existing rear extension, and we can see the proposed extension in situ here with the balcony above. The rear extension would have a height of 3 metres. It would be 6 metres wide and have a depth of 3.5 metres, and would be slightly set off from the boundary of number 181 by approximately 0.2 metres. This is the existing side elevation, and this is the proposed side elevation. So we can see again the balcony here with the privacy screens, the proposed extension, and the terrace coming off from the extension at this level here. Again, we have the other side elevation with a privacy screen, again the terrace and the proposed extension. We have a section here which we have the balcony which would sit in the area of the canopy that we've just seen. This is the extension here, and this is the terraced area, patio area that continues, and it would be at 2 metres beyond the proposed extension. And you can also see the existing fence line that adjoins the proposed terrace area here. So we have the existing ground floor plan and the proposed ground floor plan. So you can see on the existing ground floor plan on the left here, the bay window that is mirrored on the adjoining property, and the canopy that sits currently over that bay window. On the proposed, we have the proposed extension and the patio that sits further forward of it. As has been mentioned, the proposed extension would have a depth of 3.5 metres, and then the patio area would sit 2 metres beyond that. Members would be advised that under permitted development, subject to certain other criteria, an extension of 3 metres could be built without the need for planning permission in this location. Just looking at the existing and proposed first floor plans. So this is a canopy area here on the first floor, it's as existing, and this would be the balcony area, which takes up the same space as the canopy, and that is the flat roof of the extension below. And this is just to show you the undercroft area of the patio, which would be used for storage but not habitable accommodation. So to summarise, this is the area here, the shaded area is actual built form, so the extension and the balcony. The balcony would have the depth of the 1.5 metres, which is the same as the existing canopy. The extension would, as has been mentioned, have a height of 3 metres, be 6 metres wide, and have a depth of 3.5 metres. The raised patio area, would extend 2 metres beyond the proposed extension and would continue as the same height as the current one. And it is not considered that would be any significant change in the relationship between the application site and 181 in terms of overlooking than currently exists. And clarification has been requested from the neighbour from the statement that has just been read out about the materials for the privacy screens. It is noted from the application form that the proposed balcony would be aluminium and UPVC, so toughened glass, for the balcony, and it is expected that the screens themselves would be the same but obscure glazed. So the officer recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, Annabelle. I'm the same. I can't say that word, aluminium, so don't worry. Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Scott, for joining us, and also I'm aware that Councillor Patmore is with us now. Councillor Alban, you wish to speak? Sorry, before we go into speak, I move the officer's recommendation be adopted as to approve. Could the Vice Chair please Second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Orban.
Yes, just one question, Chair. Could the officer advise how high the boundary fence is between the two properties, so with the complainants and the development site, please?
Can you do that, Annabelle?
Yes, bear with me, Chair. I'm just going to share my screen again to aid that. Sorry, just bear with me. I'll go back to the section. So with the section here, here we have 3 meters in height to the top of the extension, and approximately looking at that, we don't have the exact height measured, but I would say that was about 1.5, so halfway between the 3 meters. And it is slightly higher, as we saw from the photographs, at this point here. But that would obviously be by the extent blocked out by the extension. So I'd say the fence adjoining the patio area currently would be approximately 1.5 meters in height.
Okay.
Thank you, Annabelle. Okay, Councillor Orban.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Paulmore, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. From the planning officer's presentation she just showed us there, obviously if you're stood on that decking area, you will be able to look over into the neighbour's garden and it will affect their privacy. And you could also look back into their dining room area if you cared to look over and back. So when you mention approved with subject to safeguarding conditions, could it not be a condition that added screening, like fenestration, so it allows light through but prevents them overlooking, be added to that 2 meter decking area so that the neighbours aren't overlooked and their privacy is kept? Thank you, Chair.
Annabelle, can you answer that?
Yeah, I can come back on it, certainly, Chair. You are able to build a higher fence there under permitted development rights up to the height of 2 meters anyway. And if members did wish to consider a condition of that sort, I think it would be reasonable if members did have concerns to impose that fencing is raised.
Okay, thank you, Annabelle. Are you happy at that, Councillor Moore?
I'd be happy if we put the condition on that the added fenestration fencing is added to give the neighbours their privacy rights, yes.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure that can be dealt with by Annabelle. I don't have any other speakers, so I'm going
Can
to...
I come back, Chair, please?
Of course, Councillor Orban, yes.
Thank you. Chair, I'm in agreement with Councillor Moore. That's the reason I asked the question about the fence height. I believe it only needs approximately, 1 or 2 fence panels of that height, of a 2 meter height, and I believe that will probably solve the situation. Apart from that, Chair, I'm fully supportive of this application. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Orban. Okay, I can't see any other speakers. Apart from Ian has just come in. Mr. Livingston.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on that point, I think just for clarity, obviously the motion that's currently in front of members doesn't include that condition, but obviously I've heard what Councillor Orban and Councillor Moore have said with regards to that. I think the one thing I'd say is that obviously the height there obviously looks like it's sort of 1.5 above the level of the patio. And therefore, as Councillor Orban says, it may be just that it needs to be increased up to about 1.8 meters above that patio area. So in terms of procedure, if the chair and vice chair, as the proposer of the motion and the seconder of the motion, agree with that change, then what will just need to happen is that if those two parties agreed to remove the current motion and re-propose a motion to be recommended and then subsequently voted on, which would include a condition requiring a boundary fence above the height of the decking to up to 1.8 meters, then that would then be the motion that members would be voting on. I do think it's worth noting, obviously, that with an increased height of fencing, there would be an impact on the neighbouring property in a different way, in so much that you could, it could increase a sense of enclosure. But we can, potentially we can look at that literally whilst the motion's being removed. I'll just quickly have a look at the plans just to make sure that we would be okay and we're not inadvertently creating an impact on the neighbours that, whilst removing overlooking, may cause a sense of enclosure.
Thank you for that, Ian. Councillor Paul, you wish to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Maybe on that instance, and maybe Mr. Livingston could confirm this, instead of having fencing, having like the shielding, which is angular, so light is allowed to permeate through, but vision isn't. So it's angled in such a way that light can still go through the fencing to the neighbour's property. So they're getting maximum light, because that was one of the issues they raised about light coming through to their area, loss of light. But it wouldn't necessarily be a solid fencing. And I think Mr. Livingston will know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Jill Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to say that I think that either of those options would be suitable, and under those circumstances, I'd be very happy to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Orban.
Yeah, I just want to double check here. They can put the height of the current fence is 1.5 meters, right? They can put a fence up to 2 meters in height without requiring any planning consent. So we could not really say put in what Councillor Moore's saying, when they could already put up a 2 meter high fence, which would still block the light out or whatever it is from the next door. So they could do that without requiring any planning consent. And so my view, Chair, is that that a 2 meter high fence is the right call. Thank you.
Right. So I'm going to put this to you, members.
Sorry, Chair. If I could, just from then on that basis, I think it can, just to clarify what members are voting on. Obviously, at the moment, the motion doesn't have a condition. I wonder whether or not, then, given what's been discussed, whether or not I just think there's a relatively easy way of doing this, which is that if the motion is withdrawn, and then if you come to me, I will propose a motion which will include, or I will mention to you a motion which will update the current recommendation, which will include a condition which will require details to be submitted prior to the development commencing, effectively, to confirm a boundary screening proposal to be okayed by officers, which would encapsulate what members are requesting. I think, taking Councillor Orban's point about you can go up to 2 meters in height, but obviously the point here is about the fact that the patio is higher than the existing ground level. So whilst the actual boundary fence could increase to 2 meters, the decking is above that, which may still potentially mean that they're, taking the concerns that have been raised, there could be the need for some sort of negotiation around what exactly is to be put in place to ensure both the neighbours' privacy and also light, but also a workable solution. So if that chimes with you, Chair, to withdraw the motion and get Councillor Coleman Cook's agreement, then I'll quickly outline a condition for you.
Thank you for that, Ian. Yes, I was getting not confused, but I understand. And thank you, Councillor Orban, for your knowledge there, which I'm aware of. So I'm going to put to members that we withdraw this particular motion. I'll ask the Vice Chair to second that, please.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. And I will then obviously move to Mr. Livingston to put forward the new motion, which we will vote on.
So just to confirm, this is a motion to approve the application subject to safeguarding conditions, to include details of a privacy screen or boundary treatment adjacent to the patio area within the rear extension, and the ground, and that would be prior to commencement of development, and it would be to safeguard the living conditions of the neighbouring property, and that's the ground of the condition. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Ian. If members understand that, I think that does make sense. So therefore, I will propose that, and second again by the Vice Chair.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. And I will come through yourselves. For members that haven't sat with us before, I will call your name out for that motion, or against, or you're abstaining. Please let me know. Councillor Coleman-Cook.
For.
Councillor Alban.
For.
Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Garner.
For.
Councillor Towning.
For.
Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Patmore.
For.
Councillor Paul Moore.
For.
Councillor Rozeski.
For.
Councillor Scott.
I'll abstain on this one, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wright.
For.
And myself, I'm for that as well. That, without looking on my screen, I'm sure has been carried. And thank you for that, members, and Mr. Livingston there. We got there. Thank you. Motion carried. Right, moving on to agenda item 4B, which is 14 Stones Drive in Broadstairs. I will ask our officer to read out a public statement in favour of this application.
Thank you, Chair. Applicant's statement in support of application FTH 201624 14 Stones Drive, Broadstairs. Members are advised that this is an application for a variation of Condition 2 of Planning Consent FTH 191400. The current application, FTH 201624, simply seeks to vary the width and design of the front extension. The applicants feel strongly that the proposals provide a more attractive design that enhances and complements the amenity of the area for what is their forever family home. They have also been careful to discuss the proposal with the only neighbours that they considered would be affected by this current proposal. It is considered that the previously approved design featuring a cat slide roof to the front extension would detract from the design of the proposals, as it is an unfamiliar design feature in the vicinity. The applicant has therefore proposed an amended design that establishes a degree of symmetry to the front elevation. The proposal would be in accordance with the design principles set in policy D1 and would not conflict with the aims for the AHTV set in policy D7. It would comply with policy 127 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which requires development to function well and add to the overall quality of the area, to be visually attractive as a result of good architecture, and to be sympathetic to the local character and history, including the surrounding built environment and landscape setting, while not preventing or discouraging appropriate innovation or change, such as increased densities. There would not be conflict with policy 130 of the framework, as the development would not be of poor design that fails to take opportunities available for improving the character and quality of an area and the way it functions. The planning officer has suggested that the latest proposals would be detrimental. However, an application was granted under application FTH 060305 for a two-storey side extension. The proposals had the result of closing the gap between 16 and 15 Stones Drive in a similar way. The extension had the effect of taking the extension to the line of the garage in the same way as the proposals are shown on the current application. The case officer is concerned that the proposals would, by virtue of the increased width, lead to a diminution of quality, but there is simply no evidence of this, especially when a similar extension has been approved nearby. The applicant would also like to draw attention to the planning inspector's appeal decision in respect of 1 Stones Drive. The inspector made comparisons with the prominent position of these proposals not having any material effect upon the amenity of the area. Members are respectively asked to support this application and recommend approval in line with the recommendations of the Broadstairs and St Peter's Town Council.
Thank you, Suki. I will now ask the planning officer, which is once again Annabelle, to give her report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully members can see my screen.
You can.
Thank you. This is the application site number 14, Sevenstones Drive. It's at the end of the cul-de-sac and it's outlined in red as usual. As has been mentioned, planning permission was previously granted for a variety of front, side and rear extensions, as well as alterations to materials to the property and additional on-street parking. This application seeks to make changes to that consent, and they include internal revisions to the internal layout, alterations to fenestration, removal of previously approved chimney stacks, and alterations to materials, the widening of the front extension, as well as the widening of the front extension. Sorry. This is some photos of the application site. So this is number 14 here at the end of the cul-de-sac. Number 12 is this adjoining property here, and this is number 15. This is a closer view of number 14, and you can see the sort of regularity, and whilst they do not mirror each other, these properties, they have elements and a degree of consistency between them. And so standing in front of number 14, you can see the extension here, the balcony is existing here, the garage, the flat roof, and this is number 12. And you can see that number 14 sits slightly fractionally in front of number 12. So again, we can see number 12 here and properties running away from it. This is the edge of the application site here, and you can see the garage. And again, you can see the fact that it does sit forward of number 12. And again, this is number 14 on the left-hand side of the photograph here, and you can see its relationship with number 15. And this gives sort of standing at the edge, the upper side of the edge of the cul-de-sac. So you can see number 12 here, the space between it and number 14 in centrally in the photograph and its garage, and the landscaping and the relationship between the application site and number 15. I will draw members' attention to the fact that officers are content with all the proposed alterations except for the widening of that front extension and an increase of width on above the garage, and we will look at that when we review the plans. And sorry, the last photograph before we move on to the plans. This is the rear of the application site. So this is the application site, and the hatched area shows the extensions that have already been approved, and that this consent will seek to vary. And so the hatched areas are all extensions. This was the existing parking area that we've just seen, and this was an additional parking area, which was all allowed on the previous consent. So this is the front elevation as we've just seen. This is the front elevation that has been approved under the previous application. And the area, as I say, there are some changes to fenestration and things between this and the application as it currently stands. But officers are not concerned about those or the internal layout or alterations materials. What officers have concerns about is this area here. So this is what has been previously approved. This is what they are now proposing to do. So it will increase in width and come much closer to the edge of the garage. This is the existing side elevation. and this is the approved side elevation. So you can see some of the extensions that have already been approved. And again, this is the elevation that's been proposed. Again, you can see some of the additional elements or changes to fenestration, but it is this area here that we are looking at in terms of the changes. So the existing rear elevation, the rear elevation as approved, so you can see the extensions that have been approved, but this is the area that we draw members' attention to because this is the area of concern to officers. So you can see here the extension has grown, and this is the area that we consider to be encroaching further across the garage. So this is the upper side extension as it originally existed, as approved on the previous application, and now as proposed. So looking at the ground floor, this was it as existing, and this is the application was approved. So you can see some of the extensions that wrap around the existing parking area and the extended parking area. This is the first floor as existing. So this is the garage that sticks out prominently here. This is what was approved in the previous application. So you have the master bedroom. This area is still garage and the balcony, etc. And you can see the wraparound extensions that we've seen previously. This is what is now being proposed. So the master bedroom essentially increases in width. Sorry, bear with me. So concerns are, however, raised about this extension and the increase in width and we can see it here on the front extension. Whilst the increase is fairly minor in terms of scale, being 0.7 in width, it is considered that this increase would alter the pattern of development in this part of Seven Stones Drive, particularly in terms of the visual and physical gaps between the properties. And this is particularly emphasised by the fact that number 14 does sit forward of number 12, and there are slight changes in levels, slightly increasing as you come up to number 14. So the officer recommendation is that although most of the alterations proposed in this application are acceptable, the increase in the width of the master bedroom above the garage here is considered to be unacceptable. So the recommendation is for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Annabelle. I move the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Orban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As this property is at the end of the cul-de-sac and not at the not in the middle of the row of houses, I really can't see this 0.7 increase has any effect either on the street scene or against any other, or affects the neighbours. So for me, Chair, I'm in favour of giving approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I do agree. I actually think it looks more balanced with the increased extension. I've also observed the fact that it's on a corner and there's plenty of space, and I really can't see how that this would cause any problems at all about the appearance of the area. So I really feel I can't agree with refusal on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paulmore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. All the comments that I was going to make have already been muted by Councillor Orban and Councillor Bayford. I think it adds to the symmetry. It's 0.7 of a metre. It's far enough away from that building, although it's projected forward on the building line. They're not tight plots. It will have no adverse effect on the neighbouring property. And who wouldn't want to increase their master bedroom over their garage area? I think it blends in very well. So I would be for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I don't see any other speakers, so I'm going to put the officer's recommendation to you, which is this stage to refuse. And as you know the ropes by now, then obviously if that fails, I'll come back to you. So, Councillor Coleman-Cook.
I'm not sure if I am for this extension.
So you're against the option?
Yes, yeah, thank you. Against.
Sorry if I misunderstood anyone. If you say the recommendation from officers is to refuse, if you're not happy with that, please say you're against. Councillor Orban.
Yeah, against.
Councillor Bayford.
Against.
Councillor Curry.
Against.
Councillor Dennis.
Against.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Towning.
Against.
Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Patmore.
Against.
Councillor Paulmore.
Against.
Councillor Rozeski.
Against.
Councillor Scott.
Against.
Councillor Wright.
Against.
And I will go with yourselves. So that motion has been lost. So we need a motion to put forward to approve. Ian, do you wish to come back or?
Thank you, Chair. Just all I would just say is that in terms of when proposing the motion to approve, if the respective councillor, when putting that forward, could just elaborate. From what we've heard, it's to recommend approval because the proposal doesn't harm the character and appearance of the area.
Yep, that's what I thought. There were several, but if I come to,
I would propose that, Chair, Councillor Paulmore.
Okay, could I have a seconder on that, please?
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair, Councillor Alban.
Right, thank you, Councillor Orban. Once again, I know I have to do this for the record. I will have to go through names once again. So in this case, if you're for the amendment or against or abstain, please say so. Councillor Coleman-Cook.
For.
Councillor Orban.
For.
Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Garner.
For.
Councillor Towning.
For.
Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Patmore.
For.
Councillor Paulmore.
For.
Councillor Rozeski.
For.
Councillor Scott.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And that includes me. I'm for as well. That was unanimous and the motion has been approved. Thank you for that, members. Now moving on to agenda item 4C, the land of Orchard House, Sheriff's Court Lane in Ramsgate. I will ask Suki once again to read out a statement in favour of this application.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. This presentation is given by the applicant and his wife, Mr. and Mrs. Holbrook. This application has been made to build a home for our daughter and family who currently live with us in Orchard House. They moved into our home when she was diagnosed with cancer 2 weeks after giving birth, so we could offer them our full support during treatment and ongoing recovery. As a result, our home is now cramped and overcrowded, and our grandson has reached the age where he needs his own bedroom. Longer term, this close proximity will enable our daughter and her family to offer us the support to remain living in our home into old age, and in the meantime, we can continue to support with childcare. No objections have been received from anyone, including our neighbours and Minster Parish Council. Permission has recently been granted for a pair of two-storey semi-detached properties to the north within yards of our boundary, and where we once looked at trees, we now look at a large expanse of roof, as you will see from the photographs included in the application. Our intention is to build a quality, eco-friendly home that is sympathetic to the environment, starting with the fabric of the building, including high-performance glazing, grey water system, air source heat pump and PV panels. This is especially important to us as our intention will be to stay in Sheriff's Court Lane for many years. For our own privacy, we will be screening the property from the lane, also providing a barrier from the heavy vehicles that regularly go past to and from the farm and industrial units at the end of the lane. We fully understand that personal circumstances rarely justify development, but in this case, the circumstances are entirely relevant, as the only other option available to us is to site a mobile home on the garden to be used for ancillary purposes, and for which we are advised that no planning permission would be required, but would not only be far less attractive, it would provide our daughter and her family with a much lesser standard of accommodation and living. We also appreciate the provision of one dwelling is small scale in terms of the council's housing delivery policy, but we are not developers looking to make profit, just a family wishing to use our land to provide a forever home.
Thank you very much, Suki. I now call upon Councillor Pugh, who I believe is online, who is the ward councillor, wishes to speak. Councillor Pugh.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will try and be brief, as I appreciate that there's many applications to consider today. I'll try and touch on a few points, but not go over what the applicant and the applicants have already stated in their statement. I understand the reasons that are given for refusal, particularly potential impact on the countryside and the rural character of the area. But quite honestly, knowing the area as I do, and as one of the ward councillors, and I've probably been down Sheriff's Court Lane almost as much as the residents that live down there, which is nestled almost slap bang in the middle of Monkton and Minster along Monkton Road and Monkton Street. Quite honestly, I would say that Sheriff Court Lane, and in normal circumstances, I'd argue for a site visit, to be honest, so that committee members could appreciate the site and the area for what it is. But it is quite sparsely populated. As the applicant has mentioned in their statement, there have been no objections, particularly from Minster Parish Council or from Monkton Parish Council as well, or from residents in the neighbouring vicinity, because there are so few. But also as well, this is a local family that want to stay together. And I understand that the personal circumstance of this cannot be attributed and have weight in this application. But in all honesty, I mean, this isn't an applicant that wants to split the land and make a profit, as we see in other areas where there's a property with a large plot of land. And quite honestly, if permission isn't granted, I think the alternative is for the family to site a caravan on the land, which will have a much more detrimental impact on the long-standing views and the rural character. And just to provide a bit of context, across the road on the main road from where this site is, there's a collection of elm trees, which one of the parish councillors from Minster is doing a bit of investigation at the moment, because they have a feeling that they might be a new species of elms, of Thanet elm trees, which is quite exciting. So, I do appreciate the rural character and the nature and the risk of this impacting on the views across the countryside. But quite honestly, the area is so sparsely populated as it is. I think the greater need for us to allow buildings to be built in areas such as this, and as the applicant said, 2 houses have been given permission right next to it, which, if that's the concern, is the impact on long-standing views and the rural character of the area, then they shouldn't have received consent. It's my view that it's better that this is given permission and that the development or new developments are concentrated in the area rather than spread out. Quite honestly, because I just think that, let's be honest, we're building on almost every bit of agricultural land we can. And I think one house here isn't really going to make much of a difference to the impact on the area. But that's just my view. So I would urge councillors to approve this application.
Thank you for that, Councillor Pugh. I now ask Mr. Livingston to give his report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just present my screen. Okay, hopefully you can see the screen. So the application site is outlined in red. So the application is for the erection of a detached 2-storey dwelling. The main issues to consider for members are the principal development, the impact on the character and appearance of the countryside, living conditions, highways, and all other general material considerations. So the site is located outside the urban confines. As already mentioned, it's along the Monkton Road and Monkton Street that connect Minster and Monkton. Members will be familiar from a few months ago with the Who Farm site, which is just here. The application site is down Sheriff's Court Lane here. So this is an aerial image of the site. Just to pick up the point with regards to the two dwellings that's been mentioned by both the applicant and Councillor Pugh, that relates to this site here, which is actually an application for two dwellings that came before members as well. So that was the plan. So it was to put two dwellings in between the existing properties here. So the proposed site for a new dwelling is in this location here. So this is a view looking north from Sheriff Court Lane towards the site. So you can see Orchard House in the background there. This is just a closer in view at the moment, so you can see the current boundary treatment in place. So this is just another view showing the designer's style of Orchard House. Then this is the view looking back towards the site. So you can see it's a raised ground level here for where to the actual highway itself. And you can see, again, through the mist, the countryside beyond. And this is just another view. So you can see there goes the lane down on the right-hand side of the image there. And you can see the backdrop of the countryside in that image. And this is just a view back up Sheriff's Court Lane, just to show that obviously we are looking at a lane. There are no footways either side of the property. So it is a site that is reliant, as the previous site for the two houses was, it is reliant on private modes of transportation. So this is the site plan of the proposed dwelling. So it is proposed to utilise the existing access into Orchard House to then access this area here for parking and turning, with the dwelling located to the south of Orchard House. So this is the elevation that would front the lane. So you can see it's you've got pitched roof style with dorm windows fronting on that elevation. Then this is the south facing elevation. So if you remember the view where we were looking to the north from the images, so you can see it's a two-story property with pitched roofs. This is the view to the east. And then this is the front elevation, so it faces Orchard House as part of the proposal. And this is the ground floor plan, and then the first floor plan. So it's a 4-bedroom property that's being proposed, and then the roof. So roof plan. So just showing the different roof forms that are present. So this is a section provided by the applicant. So you can see that what's being proposed on the just going on the plan at the bottom of the image, you can see that the highway level, so there is a slight increase, but there is going to be some reduction in the level of that garden, but it's still above the highway level. You can also see they've included the section of Orchard House, which we've seen, to show that the proposed dwelling wouldn't be any higher than Orchard House. And also they have included the dwellings that have previously been approved. So officers consider that the open section of garden that would be built on does relate to the countryside and the landscape character areas in particular. And in an officer's view, we do feel it would be clearly visible and set against the open countryside, which is contrary to the defined characteristics of both the landscape character area and also harming the intrinsic value of the countryside. So it does result in harm to the environmental dimension of sustainable development. Now, there is obviously a situation, as outlined at last committee, where the council is currently looking at development on the basis of the presumption in favour of sustainable development for development outside the urban confines, and therefore it falls to consider whether or not any harm created demonstrably outweighs the benefits. In this instance, obviously the benefits that are cited about having an additional dwelling, whilst limited, it's still an additional dwelling. Just to pick up the personal circumstances that have been mentioned, they haven't, admittedly, it hasn't been submitted as part of the application, but just to come back on that, it's not considered that personal circumstances do outweigh any harm to the countryside on this sort of basis, because whilst it's understood that personal circumstances are clearly obviously important to the current occupants, we are in a situation where this would be physical development which will be lasting long past any proposed occupants would be present in the property, and therefore it is considered that that there is harm there that would not be outweighed by personal circumstances. I just want to pick up the point as well with regards to the siting of a mobile home. And this is covered in the officer's report. Obviously, the proposal is for a two-storey permanent structure, which would, in officers' minds, create more of an impact than a single-storey mobile home, which could be sited under permitted development rights. So it is considered that whilst there may be a fallback process, a fallback in place, that the development would be materially different from that fallback and would cause additional harm to the character and appearance of the countryside. As I mentioned in the point of information, the contribution for the SPA and SAMs has been covered, but when weighing up the benefits of the scheme against the harm to the countryside, it is considered by officers that those harms do outweigh the benefits outlined, and therefore the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman Cook. Does any member wish to speak on this? Councillor, few coming in now. Yes, I thought there would be. Councillor Paul Moore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Could I just confirm that because this is a two-storey building and therefore affects the skyline of the countryside, that's one of the reasons why this is being refused. If it was a single-storey dwelling, would it have had as much impact, or would it have had a more favourable conclusion to that first? Thank you.
Ian, can you?
Yeah, so I mean, whilst we obviously haven't considered a single-storey proposal, I think it's inevitable that the impact would be lessened in terms of the impact on the sense of openness that's created by this site and its relationship with the countryside. It's difficult to say that, say, a single-storey dwelling would be acceptable because obviously without the design of it, the footprint of it, and those sorts of things. But I think the scale of the building certainly is one of the elements that officers do feel results in the harm.
Thank you. Councillor Orban.
Yeah, I'm a bit torn with this, to be honest. Whilst I obviously recognise that the infill of the new buildings was the right decision that we made, this would kind of round off, if you like, the block of houses along Sheriff's Lane. But at the same time, I don't particularly like the design of the building. I just think it would look odd there. But anyway, that's just the view I have. Can I a question? As part of the reading out from the owners or their agent, they're saying it's going to be like a green, a very green house for heating and stuff of that nature, and that's the way that they want to go, which is great. But I did notice that there is a chimney. Is that? I mean, if you're going green, why the hell do you want a chimney? So it's just a silly point. But could you advise if that is an open fireplace, please, Ian?
Can you do that?
I'm just looking at the plans. I mean, it's shown on the. Let me just present my screen. Bear with me. I mean, it's shown as open fireplace. I think that the thing that I would say with regards to this as a point, I mean, whether or not it's decorative rather than use, and obviously we're talking about the internal layout. So the controls. So there's the living room. You can see obviously they've shown what looks like a fireplace. Whether or not it's a, you know, it is something that's not necessarily controlled in terms of whether or not a wood burner is put in there, if it's obviously going up the chimney stack as proposed. I think it's one thing that I would say is that with any new dwelling that's approved in the district, there is a requirement and a condition that's imposed which requires at least an equivalent of code level 4 for sustainable homes, which includes issues to do with energy efficiency and water efficiency and pollution and those sorts of requirements which are covered under Part L of the building regulations. So in terms of the weight to be given to the property being energy efficient, you know, we haven't got, I don't think, any details of that would add further weight to the benefits of the proposal. And again, I would still put forward that the harm to the general countryside still results in a net harm on the environmental dimension of sustainable development.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Towning.
Yeah, I'd like to take it up from where Councillor Paul Moore actually talked about a single-storey dwelling. I think that is an option that, you know, should be actually thrown back at the applicant and asked, you know, would they reconsider the design and plan? Because if we really consider this application much closely, I mean, firstly, there is a family requirement of an ongoing situation. Whilst I appreciate it, and it doesn't form part of planning, there is a need to be flexible. I mean, the entire countryside is up, being butchered apart. And I think here is an opportunity for you as planners to go back and say, we can look at this on a sympathetic basis and look at the possibility of how a design that would fit in as a single story and a design that would not impact, as you keep saying, on the local environment and the countryside. I strongly would suggest that.
Thank you, Councillor Towning. I'm sure Ian could look at that, but I'm coming back to Councillor Paul Moore. You wish to add, Councillor Moore?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Towning has just hit on that as I was going to reaffirm. If it's size and mass that we're concerned about, and a single-storey dwelling lowers the profile of the street scene, is there any restrictions that they can go down so they could have a floor beneath, a basement area, so they could still have their two-storey building, but they would dig down? It might be more costly for them, but at least they would gain what they're trying to achieve. And it's just a suggestion that if we're not happy with the design and we're not happy with size and mass, then maybe we can go back to them and say, look, this is something maybe you want to look at. Thank you, Chair.
I think on, if I may, Councillor Moore, I think obviously depends on the vote on this. What happens after that? Not for us really to get involved in suggestions to the applicants and so on. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also torn on this one. I don't like to see further development in the countryside. But as Councillor Orban said, this extra house does seem to round off the line of houses. I don't actually have a problem with the design of it. I find it quite difficult to see the harm that this would cause. I'm not in any way considering the personal circumstances because I don't think they should be taken into account. But I really can't see on an ongoing basis why this will cause a problem in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Keane.
Yes, really just what Councillor Bayford has said. I don't feel that this causes a particularly negative impact on the environment with the group of houses that are there already. So I'm tending towards supporting the proposal. The proposal 4, not the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Keane. I was going to ask you then, but you've done it for me. I can't see any other comment or speakers. So, right, as usual, I'm going to put this to you, members. I move the officer's recommendation is adopted, and that is for refusal. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. I will go through yourselves once again, members. If you're for refusal, please say for. Against, obviously against, or abstain. Councillor Coleman-Cook.
Against.
Councillor Alban. Have we lost Councillor Alban? I'll come back to Councillor Alban. Councillor Jill Bayford?
Against.
Councillor Curry?
Against.
Councillor Dennis?
Against.
Councillor Garner?
For.
Councillor Towning?
Against.
Councillor Keane?
Against.
Councillor Patmore?
Against.
Councillor Paul Moore?
Against.
Councillor Scott?
Against, Chair.
Councillor Roseski?
Against.
Councillor Wright?
Against.
Myself, I'm against as well. I'll come back to Councillor Alban, in fairness. Are you there, Councillor?
Sorry, Chair, I pressed the wrong button and I went off.
Well, it's nothing on you.
I did say I was for the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Okay. I'm just looking at Councillor Garner's. Councillor Garner, you wish to comment? That motion is lost, by the way, but I will come to Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just, I mean, obviously another motion's going to be put in front of us to approve the application.
Yes.
I'm just concerned that before that's done, if we just do that to vote for a motion to approve, there won't be any conditions, that some of the usual conditions that are on applications when they're approved, and a number of other conditions that might be appropriate for this application. You know, there's the standard ones like development's got to be started in 3 months.
Councillor Garner, I do understand what you're getting at, and I'm sure Ian knows that I'm going to ask him if he. Nice smile there, Ian.
But yeah, sorry, if I could come back, Chair. So usually under delegated authority, when applications are approved by members, sometimes we are explicit in saying approved and say subject to safeguarding conditions. Obviously, to clarify, when applications like this are approved, we would look to be explicit in them. If a member could be explicit in the motion to say subject to safeguarding conditions, because as I mentioned, one of the conditions would be, about equivalent to code level sustainable homes level 4. There's water efficiency conditions. There's the standard materials. There's all sorts of conditions that we've normally put on, not overly restrictive, but the standard conditions that we put on. If I could, Chair, may I come back following the vote as well?
Yes, by all means.
Thank you.
Okay.
So obviously, hearing the comments of members, obviously a few in terms of suggestions of a reduction in height, but however, I think that there is a point here which a number of members have commented that actually the development on its own as it is considered acceptable. I think as with the previous vote on Seven Stones Drive, it's just important that whoever proposes the motion, one, if putting forward a motion for approval, mentions to subject to safeguarding conditions, but also gives the ground of approval to go against the recommendation. In that instance, what I've heard members say is with regards to the fact that it's not considered that the development would result in significant harm to the countryside or the landscape character area. by, and that is effectively the reason why the development is considered to be acceptable. I've just seen in the chat, if I, again, not to take too much advantage of the microphone, but I've just seen one of the points raised with regards to conditions. A standard condition would include details of landscaping to be provided. And obviously this proposal does propose hedging around the edge of the property to reinforce the boundary of the site, which would be a requirement of any approval. I think just to clarify that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And yes, I noticed Councillor Garner's condition there. I hope that's been answered for you, Councillor Garner. Right, obviously, back to yourselves, members. I would like a proposal for approval. You've heard of the comments from Mr. Livingston. Could I have a proposal, please?
I propose that, Chair. Councillor Paul Moore.
Councillor Moore, could I have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second that. Jill Bayford.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Again, if you're for, please say so. Against or abstain. Councillor Coleman-Cook.
For.
Councillor Orban.
Against.
Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Dennis.
Against.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Towning.
For.
Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Patmore.
For.
Councillor Paul Moore.
For.
Councillor Scott.
For.
Councillor Roseski.
Abstain.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And I'm going to abstain on this one because there's a bit of a difficult decision on this, but I believe that motion has been carried. Thank you, James. It has. Thank you, members. Right, agenda item 4D, Kingsgate College, Convent Road, Broadstairs. Once again, I'm coming back to Suki. Keeping her busy tonight, Suki. She has some more statements to read out for you, which are in favour of this application.
Yes. There is no name at the top of this statement, but I will read it out. The proposed conversion of the former Kingsgate College will result in the reuse of a disused building in need of repair. Although just outside the current development boundary, the site is previously developed land in a sustainable location with numerous community facilities within easy walking distance and bus stops close to the site. These facilities include the neighbouring golf club, whose restaurant and bar are likely to appeal to golfers and non-golfers alike. The proposed modifications to footprint and built volume are very minor in nature, whilst the conversion of an existing building represents a sustainable reuse of land. The proposal also includes measures that will create or enhance wildlife habitats and biodiversity. As officers has confirmed, the proposed conversion is not detrimental or contrary to any of the four stated aims of the Green Wedges policy. We consider that the proposals fully accord with the local plan. Whilst the previous use of the site was educational, the development is not considered to result in the loss of a community facility, as did not previously serve the local community. In any event, there is no reasonable prospect of an educational use returning to the property, and it is therefore essential that best use is made of the building. The proposed conversion allows the building to be repaired and put back into productive use. Future Homes has an excellent track record of delivering high-quality housing in and around Thanet, so you can be assured that these apartments will be delivered quickly and contribute to the council's housing supply without unnecessary delay. A contribution has also been agreed to help boost affordable housing locally. As a result, it is respectfully requested that planning permission be granted.
Thank you very much, Suki. Speaking under Council Rules 20.1 is Ward Councillor Bayford, Bob Bayford.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, I'm a very rare visitor to planning, so I wonder if you could just explain to me exactly what defer and delegate means. Does it mean, in fact, once it's delegated to officers, they have the ability to make changes to the application?
I'll come to Ian on that. I do know, but...
Thank you, Chair. So it's defer and delegate for approval, subject to conditions, and also the agreement of a legal agreement to secure the heads of terms as outlined in the report. So it wouldn't result in changes to the proposal in terms of plans, etc.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Bakeford?
Not happy, Chairman, but better informed. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I mean, whenever I see anything that's in the green wedge, my hackles rise, and they did with this one. And in my ideal world, I would like to see the old building demolished and the land put back to nature. But quite clearly, that isn't going to happen.
Councillor Bayford, we've lost you. You suddenly muted. It wasn't me that did that, Councillor Bayford.
I'm not sure I believe you, Chairman, but there we are. I don't know where I got to now. I mean, other than saying that, you know, don't like to see development in the green wedge, I mean, I can appreciate the buildings are already there. And to be perfectly honest, derelict buildings sitting in there would be an eyesore and would detract from what's going on. I trust that the officers are actually looking for this to be as sensitive as it can be. I take the point that it is in the green wedge, but probably isn't doing anything to detract from the green wedge, and that is really important. I mean, it's absolutely vital that the wedges are protected. But I feel under the circumstances that, you know, there is going to be something there. I suppose one of my concerns is, and I know it's not something that really anything can be done about, but I just hope that the granting of permission for this there can't then be used as some kind of precedent which allows other people to come along and want to put things in the green wedge. We know the green wedge is under threat. There have been a number of applications recently that have, fortunately, as far as I'm concerned, have been turned down. There will be others coming. And as I say, I think this has to be viewed as a total exception. And if it is, then I accept that it has to be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. I totally understand your comments there. Okay, I'll ask Annabelle, I think it is once again, please to give her report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just present. Excuse me, members. This is the application site outlined in red. We have Convent Road, running top to bottom along here, and Northfallen Golf Course with its buildings and car park to the top of the site here. So the application is for the change of use of the existing college building to 18 apartments. It would be 15 two-bed and 3 three-bed units. And there would be some alterations and extensions to the building to facilitate this change of use. So this is an aerial photo view of the site. Again, you can see the existing building here, some existing hard surfacing, and we have the golf course to the north here. It clearly shows from this photograph the amount of landscaping that is some within the site, but also in the surrounding area, so much so that you can barely see Convent Road itself, which runs up along there. It is noted that trees in this location and this part of the site, and some on the opposite side of Convent Road, are actually covered by a TPO. And as has been mentioned, the site is in the countryside and also within the green wedge. So I'll just show you some photographs of the site. Bear with me. This is the existing access to the site. So these trees that you can see along here are actually covered by the TPO. So moving in further into the site, this is the front of the building and you can see the existing hard surfacing. And again, this is further into the site. So this is the main entrance to the building. And again, you can see the hard surfacing that already exists on the site. And now we're just moving around. The building, as we've seen, is kind of an L shape with a large expanse here and a smaller expanse running along this boundary here. And again, you can see the hard surfacing, some outbuildings, and a sort of transition between the hard surfacing and the sort of more green part of the site that we'll see in a moment. So this is this outbuilding that we saw on the previous photo, and the edge of the hard surfacing is here. The building is off to the left of this photo, and this is a sort of landscaping, more green area of the site that exists currently. And this is looking again back to the southern part of the site, which was part of the Kingsgate College site, but doesn't actually form part of the application site. But you can again see the trees along there, and it is quite enclosed by trees, as we've already seen. So again, we're taking a look at the rear of the application site at this point in time. So you can see there are difference in levels here and a number of dormer windows and things like that to the rear of it. But again, you can see just on the edge here that there are trees and things, and the golf course sits and with its car park to the left of this photo. So again, we have the site plan. So this is existing. The existing access we've just seen is here. This is the building. So this is the main bulk of the building and the bit that sort of comes off. The area of hard surfacing is here. And you can see the number of trees that exist. As mentioned previously, this is the area that we are considering as the application site. The main sort of grassed area we saw in the photographs earlier is this bit below here. So it doesn't actually fall within the application site. So this is the proposed site plan. Excuse me. This again is the main building, as you can see, and the flank here. This is the hard surfaced area, which will again be utilised for car parking as it was in the time of the former college. There are some extensions we will look at when we look at the floor plans, but the main sort of extension and buildings that aren't sort of are additional, which would form in the green wedge, are an extension here, which is where the garages that we saw in the photographs are, and there is a bin and bike store, and also a carport, which would be on the existing hard surfaced area. So this is the existing southwest elevation, which is the front elevation, as we've seen. So there's the fire escape we saw, the main sort of front entrance. And this is the proposed front of the building. Again, this has limited changes to the front. It is proposed to be a contemporary, more modern refitting of the building, and it would keep its main focus of the front elevation and front entranceway. This is a southeast side elevation as existing, and this is as proposed. Again, you can see it is updated and become more contemporary in nature, and there are terraces and more modern materials utilised to give it an uplift and bring it back into a sort of more modern and contemporary building. This is the rear elevation as existing. This is a sort of glazed conservatory element we saw in the photographs and the dormers that we saw. This is the proposed rear elevation, and this is where most of these sort of extensions happen. And we'll see that on the floor plans, but some of the elements are squared off, and this element here is a bit of an extension, as you would have seen. But again, it is well screened by vegetation, and this is not new footprint as such, just alterations and minor extensions to the existing building. So this is the other side elevation, and you can see the two garages that we looked at when we saw the photographs. And this does change, and it does have an extension here, which provides additional units. but that is considered to be seen against the built form that is already on site and not to provide a big expanse of new development within the green wedge. Excuse me. Turning to the floor plans now. So we have existing basement here, and that will be used in the proposed development to be the plant room. The existing ground floor, and as you can see, if I briefly draw your members' attention to it, there are some areas where the building line, particularly to the rear, dips in and out. So looking at the proposed ground floor plan, you'll see that these elements are squared off. So again, it is extensions to the building in the green wedge, but they are considered minor and enable the building to be fully used. The ground floor here would provide 7 flats. This is the first floor as existing, and this is the proposed first floor. And again, you can see there are extensions and of things along here, and these are the extensions we've just seen, but they would be used to provide terracing and amenity space for the units here. And this floor would provide another 8 units. This is the existing second floor plan, and this is the proposed second floor plan. Again, you can see it would provide the final 3 units, and there would be elements of terracing and outdoor space of effectively to serve those units. The existing roof plan is the number of roof lights, and again the proposed roof plan. As mentioned, there are a number or 3 additional buildings that would be located on site. This is a carport, so you can see the floor plan and its elevations. It will also house the plant for the electric vehicle charging points, and would be single story, as you can see here, and would sit on the existing area of hard standing. And then we have the proposed bin store with its floor plan and elevations, and we have the proposed bike store. Just to give you some visualized artist impressions that have been provided. So this would be coming into the site. This is the main elevation entrance that we've seen to the front here. This is the flank that would be changed slightly as in this proposal. And this is a visualization of the rear as if you were standing in the golf club car park. Sorry, bear with me. And to summarise, the application site is clearly within the countryside and within the green wedge. But as has been mentioned, the scheme would reuse an existing building with minimal extensions and alterations, and it's not considered to result in any adverse impact on the countryside or the green wedge, although there are some limited additional built forms by way of the carport and the bin store and bike store and this extension here, that although it replaces existing built form in the form of the double garage, it is higher than what is there now. Originally, the application had a footpath that ran sort of from here into the trees that exist here and out onto Convent Road. And that did result in a number of trees, or an impact on existing trees and potentially the loss of some of those trees. That footpath has now been removed from the scheme. Only one protected tree, which is a sycamore, would be lost in this application now, and that is to allow the refuge vehicles to safely access the site. But all of the other trees will be retained on site. Additional planting is also proposed, particularly along this boundary here, which we saw previously was open from the photographs. And this additional planting has been welcomed by the council's arboricultural officer, and he considers that the species proposed are acceptable and they will harm the scheme visually and increase its biodiversity. No adverse impact on living conditions of adjoining residents, because essentially there aren't many around, but it would provide a good standard of accommodation for future occupiers. There is a requirement for the SAN contribution to be paid, and KCC contributions to education, community learning, youth services, libraries, social care and waste. And in this instance, also affordable housing is being dealt with by a contribution for off-site provision. These have been agreed with the applicant. So given the above, the officer recommendation is to defer and delegate for approval subject to the receipt of the completed undertaking for those required contributions.
Thank you, Annabelle. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted, and as you heard, it's to defer and delegate. Would the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. I have Mike Garner. Councillor Garner, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions about the first one about the trees. I read in the report that there was concerns raised by officers and to a number of other people about trees lost to facilitate footpaths. That's plural footpaths, particularly the one through the south. The scheme has been amended and the proposed footpath through the south has been removed. So is there still footpaths being created through trees that aren't covered by the TPO? Because I just wanted to clarify. The report does say that only one sycamore is being removed, and that's covered by a TPO. But are there any trees being removed that aren't covered by TPOs? That's the main question, I think. The other question I have is about the money being made available, £400,000 for affordable housing. I'm interested to know where actually does that go? Where does that money? Who gets that money, and how do they provide the affordable housing? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Annabelle, can you answer that, please?
Yes, if I can just come back on the first point raised in relation to the trees. I'll just share my screen, which might be helpful. Right, this is the tree protection plan, and this is the plan as it was originally submitted to us. So it had these areas here are the footpaths that were being referred to. These are the trees that are protected by the tree preservation order. So in this location here, but this was the path. These trees aren't protected, but they do lie in the application site. And this is the southern footpath that's referred to that would have potentially caused an impact on the trees. But this footpath has now been removed from the scheme. So there will be no loss of trees other than that one sycamore as a result of this application.
Thank you. Come to Ian, if you can touch on the other part of Councillor Garner's request.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So in terms of the 400,000 contribution, so that's secured by a Section 106 agreement, and it comes into the council. So it's held until it's accessed by the council's housing strategy team, which are also responsible for the delivery of affordable housing projects. So obviously members will be aware of a number of projects in Cliftonville, a number of garage sites in and around the district where units of affordable housing are being provided by the council. Fundamentally, the money will be used to top up borrowing under potentially the various schemes that are used to borrow money from central government to provide affordable housing, and will allow for the delivery of additional units within the district, within the Thanet district, which is how it's the provisos put. We looked at this in terms of the contribution and the amount, and it has gone through both the head of housing and planning, Bob Porter, but also Ashley Jackson as a strategic housing manager, to ensure that the amount of money that's provided would actually be able to assist in providing 5 additional units elsewhere. And on the basis of the amount provided, it would provide that amount by being able to be topped up by the borrowing to provide units elsewhere. So we do consider that it satisfies the requirements of providing an appropriate contribution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Jill Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I also believe that the protection of the green wedge is vital, but in view of the fact that this land has already been developed, I feel that to deny the creation of 18 homes, which I feel have an attractive design with also well-planned landscaping, the retention of all but one of the trees on the site, a contribution made to affordable housing, I feel it would be unreasonable to go against this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Paul Moore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm at loggerheads with this because as much as it's a derelict building, and I'm all for rehabilitation of this building and the reusage of it, and it has been shown that where they are extending is already where buildings were, like the garages, etc. I've got no issues with that. My main concern is the same that Councillor Robert Bayford mentioned, which was it's the green wedge area, and I would much rather see this been returned, but that's not going to happen. That's the gold standard, what I'd like, but that will never happen. So I can see that this will happen at some degree, something will happen there, but I just want reassurances from the planning officer that the green wedge is protected, the trees are protected, any trees that are removed, we should have new trees, mature trees reinstated on the grounds elsewhere. So although we're moving it to facilitate things, we're putting it back on that area so that we don't lose that Greenswood area. When you look to that aerial photograph, that is the green wedge. If we start cutting those trees down or they're damaged from the building works, then we need to make sure that they are reinstated and replaced. So I'm at loggerheads with this. I know it's going to happen. So it needs to be managed, and we need to get the conditions and the appropriate reservations put in place for this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I think we've heard from the planning officer there is only one tree that would have to be moved at this stage because of vehicles or large vehicles arriving on site. So hopefully that's got to be adhered to. So Councillor Rzeski.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment. Looking at the application, it seems to me it's quite sympathetic and using mainly the footprint of the existing building. What would have been probably unacceptable would have been more if they were to put 20 houses there, which would have been a totally different matter. Therefore, I will be looking to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rzeski. I cannot see any other speakers on this. So once again, I'm going to put this to yourself, members.
Right, Chair, one more question. I couldn't type quick enough.
Oh, go on, Councillor Moore.
Yes, it was mentioned that we've got money for affordable housing, and I don't think the question was answered of that's going to be. Is that a case that affordable housing is anything over 10 units, and therefore some of the units on the site will be afforded to affordable housing? Is that what we're talking about?
Annabelle, can you answer that?
I can, yes, Chair. Normally, it would be the case that a development of this size, more than 10 units, would have on-site affordable provision. But given the nature of the site, it being a flat development, a small number of units being proposed, and the fact that it would be a small amount of affordable housing that would be required, there has not been a provider that wishes to take this development on, and it is considered appropriate that the affordable housing is secured but via a contribution to other schemes in the area that would use that, as Ian has previously outlined. So it's not an on-site provision in this instance, it would be a contribution to off-site provision.
Thank you for that, Annabelle. Right, I can't see any other speakers here, so I'm going to put that to you, members, and recommendation of the officers be adopted, which is to defer and delegate. Would the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman Cook. Again, members, you should know, as I say, how this works. If you're for, please state, against, and abstain. Councillor Coleman Cook?
For.
Councillor Orban?
For.
Councillor Bayford?
For.
Councillor Curry?
For.
Councillor Dennis?
For.
Councillor Garner?
For.
Councillor Towning?
For.
Councillor Keane?
For.
Councillor Patmore?
For.
Councillor Paulmore?
For.
Councillor Roseski?
For.
Councillor Scott?
For.
Councillor Wright?
For.
And myself, I'm for as well. So unanimous, that has motion has been carried. Thank you for that, members, and thank you, James, for letting me know. Okay, I'm sorry we've had some members waiting for quite some time, but we're moving on to item 4E, which is a sportsman in 123 Sandwich Road, Ramsgate. We come back to Suki because I do know you have two statements. One is for, and the other is an objection to this application.
Yes, Chair. Unless you had any preference, I was going to read the statement of objection first and the statement for second.
No worries. No, leave it to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This is a statement of Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, 2 Ash Court, Cliffsend, Kent. We live adjacent to the proposed development and object on the grounds of the detrimental impact to our property. The planning officer has adjudged that we would be impacted by a sense of enclosure and loss of sunlight, but considers this acceptable. We do not. Despite the reduced size of the cafe apartment building, this is still a very large development on a very small site and impossible to incorporate the amount of separation distance required to ameliorate the harm of this development. We will be subjected to overshadowing and loss of light, loss of outlook, noise, disturbance, loss of privacy and overlooking. Our property was built with an integral garage to the front and designed to derive its main source of light from the 2 windows to the side of the property. These windows have an open aspect towards the sea, giving a sense of light and spaciousness. The apartment building will be situated directly in front of these windows. The applicant also intends to plant trees on the boundary, reducing our light even further. Even with the reduced scale of this development, the close proximity and now planting of trees on the boundary will result in an overbearing and unduly oppressive living environment and increased sense of enclosure. The planning officer admits that this development has the potential to cause noise and disturbance, but the former use would have had similar levels of noise generation. We disagree. The pub was a failing business and rarely used. With cycle storage and parking spaces to both the side and rear of our property, we will be subjected to the constant noise and disturbance of parking and manoeuvring of vehicles. Residential access to the apartments and access to the storage area is at the rear of the property, subjecting us to noise and disturbance by people entering and exiting the residential premises and storage area throughout the day and night. The communal garden, directly adjacent to our property, will have a significant potential to cause noise and disturb the peaceful enjoyment of our property. This area could also be utilised as a smoking area merely feet away from our property, resulting in an unpleasant environment due to smoke drift. The applicant intends to plant trees along the boundary. The potential damage to our property by the planting of trees causes great concern. The planning officer states that there will be at least 1 bedroom window overlooking our property, but will have obscure glass. What conditions will be imposed to prevent this being changed? How will conditions be policed? It is extremely concerning that Kent Police are unable to recommend approval of this application and have significant concerns about the potential for crime. The planning officer concedes the opinion of the police, but states that no changes have been sought as they would result in harm to residential amenity. On this basis alone, we would urge the committee to refuse this application. This is a statement from Hume Planning Consultants. It says, "Good evening, Chairman and Councillors. I represent Hume Planning Consultancy in making this representation to the committee on behalf of the applicant. This site constitutes previously developed land occupying a sustainable location within established settlement confines. It is proposed to redevelop the site to provide 2 pairs of semi-detached family dwellings and 3 high-quality apartments above a new bar cafe. Given the contribution the development makes to the local housing stock through the efficient use of previously developed land together with the new cafe bar facility, it is asserted that the development complies with the principal policy objectives of the approved development plan. This application follows an earlier appeal, which, although dismissed, served to establish a positive position on a number of factors, including the sustainability of the site, land use, compatibility with flood risk considerations, accessibility, and parking. This decision also provided a clear design mandate for revisions to be made to the proposal, addressing the remaining issues in question, namely scale, design, and relationship with the neighbouring buildings. Through its iterative design review process and collaborative discussions with council officers, the proposal has been amended to successfully address the areas identified, principally through a significant reduction in the scale and mass of the apartment building relative to neighbouring buildings, and providing a suitable design response to the appearance of the development within the wider street scene. The amendments have reduced the scale of the apartment building from that considered through the appeal by an equivalent of a full floor to the front and, with the exception of the stairwell, 2 floors to the rear. The height of the building reflects the ridge line of the existing and proposed dwellings to both sides. The degree of reduction in the scale of the proposal is clearly illustrated by the submitted overlay plans, which compare the current proposal with that considered through the previous appeal. Windows to the rear of the apartments are now limited to 2 small first-floor bathroom windows, which are to be obscure glazed. The development has therefore responded directly to the issues raised through the appeal decision in these terms. The elevational treatment of the proposed dwelling houses has also been revised from a series of 4 forward projecting gables to a more traditional transverse pitched roof. Officers are now satisfied that the development is compatible with the surrounding context and neighbouring properties, which is reflected in the recommendation made. In all cases, statutory consultees have raised no objection and technical matters are addressed through condition. The applicant has provided a completed unilateral undertaking securing a contribution to the Council's SAMS tariff. It is understood that officers will provide an update to members in this regard. Within the terms outlined above and further to the officer's detailed evaluation of the proposal, it is respectfully requested that members' support is given to the application, which represents a sustainable form of development that accords with the provisions of the NPPF and the adopted development plan.
Thank you very much, Suki, for that. I will ask now, we have the 2 ward councillors. I would ask that you don't say the same items, and I'm certainly not being rude to either of you. I call upon Councillor Rogers to speak first, please.
Thank you, Chairman and members. This application was previously refused on the grounds of overlooking, loss of light, intrusion of privacy, amongst other reasons, and as quoted in the reasons for refusal, these buildings, by virtue of its design, height, mass and scale, would represent a visually dominant, obtrusive and incongruous form of development which would fail to respond to or respect the low density pattern of development and the predominantly 2-storey characters of the surrounding residential area, resulting in harm to the local distinctiveness of the area. This is still a 3-storey building, having a detrimental effect on the neighbours of Ash Court. It will still not be in keeping with the street scene. This proposed building is also much closer to the road than existing developments on Sandwich Road, causing a further change of street scene. Cliffs End Parish Council has objected regarding the height of the proposed development, the close proximity to adjoining properties, inadequate parking, danger of flooding, and the loss of light and privacy of the residents of Ash Court. Whilst nobody objects to the site being built on, the general feeling is that this is too high, it's not in keeping with surrounding properties, and it's an intrusion of privacy to the neighbours. So I'm asking for refusal of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers. Councillor Rattigan.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. My colleague Ben Rogers has gone over many of the main facts, but another fact is the site is in a Thanet coast protection area. We feel, the appearance, would be detrimental to the area. As said before, police do not support the application. Many local people don't support the application due to the height, the design of and the scale of it. The actual design from the previous applications that were turned down hasn't really changed. So on that basis, I feel that this application should still be turned down. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. I'll ask the planning officer to outline the report, and I believe that is in. Please.
Thank you, Chair. I will just present my screen. And here we go. Okay, hopefully you can see the presentation now.
Yep.
So the application is for the erection of 4 houses and a 3-story building comprising a cafe and micropub at ground floor and 3 flats above. So the site is outlined in red. The main issues for us to consider are the principal development, the impact on the character and appearance of the area, living conditions of neighbouring properties, impact on highways, and also other material planning considerations, including the previous application that went to appeal. So the site is within the village confines and does represent previously developed land. It does provide on the ground floor a replacement community facility for the public house by providing a cafe and micropub. And so the principle of development of the site for both residential and commercial development is considered acceptable. This is an aerial image of the site. I've included this just to show the isometric view to give you an idea of what the building that's on the site at the moment is like in terms of the scale of it and also its location, but also to point out the neighbouring properties. So 125 Sandwich Road is here, and 2 Ash Court is here, and we'll be looking at this property in a bit more detail in a little bit. So this is a view looking towards the side of number 2 Ash Court here and showing the Sportsman here. So the site extends the full length of this photo. So this is the boundary of the site, and you can see Ash Court as a cul-de-sac in the background here and number 2 here. This is a view from Folds Lane, just looking to the plot. So the plot is I wouldn't say narrow, but you can see the extent of the depth of this part of the plot. And as you saw from the red line plan, it does vary as you move east to west. So this is inside the site at the moment. So you can see at the moment hard surfacing across this area here, as well as the 2-story structure of the Sportsman pub. Just a more detailed view of the side elevation of Ash Court with the first floor window, which has been cited by in previous decisions to serve a bathroom, and a side kitchen window here on ground floor. So this is just a detailed photo of the Sportsman pub itself. This is a photo then the other side. This is a photo actually taken from Google to show you the relationship at the moment with 125 Sandwich Road. So you can see that the property here is set quite far back from the site, and the Sportsman you can see is set right on the road at the moment. And then this is just a view from across the road of the same sort of relationship. So you can see it's a sort of angled boundary treatment in this area here, with then garages before you actually end up getting to habitable room windows, sort of, which is quite far into the plot there of number 125. This is a view just showing you Sandwich Road. So you can see again that relationship of the Sportsman at the moment set on the road itself. And then just the view from the other side of the road straight on the Sportsman. So I think it's important just to talk about the previous application. The appeal decision has been provided for members as a background paper within the agenda. So I'm just going to show you the previous application. So the form of development is certainly similar to this current proposal that's in front of members, but it's not the same in scale. So it was previously refused by the planning inspector after being refused by officers, or a more technical term, the appeal was dismissed, and that was in particular with regards to the height and massing, in particular with regards to building B, as it was referred to, which is the building that serves the mixed use, as well as the impact on the living conditions of the neighbouring property of number 2, and that related to impact on windows and also to the conservatory of that property, as well as overlooking from the penthouse flat in the third floor of that property over that area. In terms of the site plan for that, you have the parking area, which was in the centre of the proposal, the 4 units to the left-hand side here, and you can actually see the footprint of the existing building in red. And then that proposal had a building in a similar location to the proposal that we'll look at. This was the design of the previous proposal. So you can see at the top, you can see the 5 units as proposed in a sort of flatter development, or appearance of 5 units, which were 3-storey in height, adjacent to 125 Canterbury Road, with then a 4-storey building adjacent to number 2 Ash Court, and closer to that vehicular crossing. So again, that was dismissed at appeal on the basis of those reasons for refusal as mentioned. I just wanted to show this section, and this is the section that was proposed from that previous application. The section here shows number 2 Ash Court on the left-hand side, and shows the relationship with the bulk of the property, the proposal as it was previously proposed. So as a 4-storey building, so you can see the relationship there, and with the side window, which is a kitchen window, which looked over that boundary fence in this sort of location here. So it shows the relationship that the inspector considered unacceptable. So back to the proposal itself. So what has been proposed in this application is a similar sort of form of development as mentioned. So you have a parking area in the centre, as outlined by the applicant in the statement. The inspector did not raise any points of concern with regards to the access or impact on highway safety, and indeed officers in the Highway Authority consider that as to be acceptable following some additional information that was provided in terms of the level of parking and the use of vehicular access in this location here. So central parking area, it does include some cycle parking to the side of the commercial building in this area here. So what we're going to just look at here is just in a bit more detail on the ground floor plan. So you can see that the 4 houses have parking directly off the street, with space for parking internally, but also a space in front of that parking area as well. In total, there are 13 spaces within the central area, which effectively provides 2 spaces for the 3 flats in the upper floors of the building here, and then the rest of the spaces are available for the cafe bar. So this is over provision in comparison to the existing public house and the parking that was available for that. And as mentioned, the previous parking provision that was made in the previous application was considered to be acceptable by both officers and also by the planning inspectorate. In terms of just going through the floor plans when looking at the overall site, it's important to note the changing mass of the corner the building that's the 3-storey building here. So you lose a bit of bulk when you move up to the first floor, mention has been made of the windows to be provided in this, and we will look at this in a bit more detail, but just to confirm that it's 2 first-floor windows serving bathrooms with the proposal to obscure glaze those windows. And then looking at the second floor, you can see that the mass is reduced at second floor level, either side of a central core. And then you can see that there is accommodation within the roof slope of the 4 houses with a rear dormer window. So no proposed front dormer windows in the houses. So just to look at the design in detail of the proposed houses. So it's proposed to be pitched roof structures with balconies at the front with a protruding timber-clad element, grey slate roof, with brickwork at first and ground floor. Just to go through then the elevations for these properties. You've got the southwest elevation. This is particularly important because this elevation is exposed when travelling from west to east because of the way that the development has been sited and the fact that those dwellings on Sandwich Road are set quite far back. So these are obscure glazed windows, and again the timber panelling cladding that's found at the front of the property. This is the elevation, so this is the sort of internal elevation facing the vehicular access and the parking area. And this is the rear elevation, so you can see the dormer window there serving some accommodation at roof level. And then the section plan just showing that relationship. So this is the ground floor plan. To pick up a point that's been raised with regards to flooding, the proposal does provide additional information about mitigation for the potential for flooding to occur. And there is a condition which is proposed, which is condition 9 on the application, which would require that there's no sleeping accommodation or living accommodation for the purposes of sleeping on the effectively below a certain level above ordnance datum level, and that is a requirement of the Environment Agency. So this is why the ground floor plan here shows utility areas and storage, whereas all of the living accommodation is at first floor level and above. So the proposal for these units is for 3-bed properties. So the bedroom is in the roof that serves that. So, and then we've got the roof plan there. This is a visualization that's been provided by the applicant. I think it's important just to note the different articulation in the feature that's provided at the front of at first floor level. I just wanted to touch on this side elevation. So this has been updated, as I mentioned. So this is the elevation that would protrude past the unit adjacent on Sandwich Road. So you can see if you look in this area of the plan here, you've got 125 here, so it's set quite far back. And then you've got the side elevation that's exposed here. And then if we, there we go, there's a photo. So in terms of the impact on that neighbouring property, you can see that actually the living accommodation is set quite far away from the boundary with the current sportsman pub and the proposal. So it's not considered that the actual siting of a dwelling in this location would result in a sense of enclosure or indeed overlooking from the relationship between the properties or causing an impact on this property on Sandwich Road. So then let's just look at the the 3-story building here. So the proposal, as mentioned, has been reduced by a story. So previously this was a 3-story building. It is a 4-story building. It's now a 3-story building with ground floor as being a commercial unit and 2 flats above. 3 flats above in total. 2 flats on the first floor and 1 flat on the top floor. So this is the elevation that faces into the vehicular access of the site. And then this is the elevation that faces towards Folds Lane. You can see there's an oriel projecting window that's here, which has an obscure glazed panel facing towards Ash Court. And we'll have a look at that in a minute, just to show that there wouldn't be any overlooking resulting in the proposal. And the only aspect that's clear glazed would be viewing towards the sea. You can also see a proposed decorative panel here, but you can also see that there's different articulation in terms of the roof and the scale of the building. And then the rear elevation, again, just showing that this this roof form here, when we look at the perspective drawings and the section plan, is set in at various points. So it's set in this area here and this area here, and the only part of the full 3-story mass is this central section here. So these are all set back at roof level, and this is set back at first floor level as well. And they've denoted that via the shadow, but we obviously looked at that on the floor plans. And this is just a section of when you're looking at the front of the building, just showing again how the top floor has been sited down to try and reduce the bulk of the property. So just to go through the floor plans here, so you've got the ground floor plan as proposed with the sort of the cafe bar here. You've then got the first floor plan in detail. So as mentioned, there's the flat roof section where the bulk of the unit has been removed. You've then got these first floor windows that serve bathroom here, serving the bedroom, and the main bathroom serving this flat, which is a 2-bedroom flat, and then there's a 1-bedroom flat here, and the obscure glazing on the rear facing element of that window. And then the central core serving the staircase and the lift, and then the flat in the sort of highest point of the building with no windows serving that and no roof terraces as well. So that's removed from the previous proposal that was refused by the council. And then this is just a roof plan, just showing that it's a flat roof structure. And then this is the visualization which shows this property. So you can see it's a slightly curved frontage for the balconies here, with different articulation of built form with balconies, which, as we've seen from the photos, are found in the area on properties on Sandwich Road all the way up. So it's not considered that the presence of balconies in this location would be out of keeping with the character of the area. So this is the street scene, just to give you an idea of the scale of the properties in question. As shown here in red, it shows the previous application denoted. So you can see that the form of development of these 4 houses has changed. So it's a pitched roof style which matches the predominant form of development in the area. And you can see the scale of the building and how much that's been reduced for the 3-story building or the mixed use building that's been put forward. So the proposal has reduced in scale, and obviously the scale and massing is one of those key points that was raised by the inspector. It is considered that the palette of materials that's found all the way along Sandwich Road has been reflected, and there are a variety of different designs which do encompass modern elements. It has been proposed that the 3-story building, the full 3-story building, has a flat roof design. Obviously, that has been used to minimise the height, but it is considered that we are in a seafront location. That this does, the site does support this type of design, and it doesn't, in its now new form, detract from the character of the area in terms of its scale or massing on this site, and it would sit comfortably on this site in the view of officers. In terms of the other key element that the previous application was refused was the impact on the neighbouring property at number 2 Ash Court. And obviously there is still a building that would be present in this location, obviously, which is to the south of it, and obviously with the 2 side windows. So the bathroom window at first floor is obviously a non-habitable room window, so that doesn't result in a significant harm to that window. But the concerns that have been raised previously by officers related to the ground floor window and also the conservatory as well, which was raised by the inspector. So this is a section which is showing the predominant mass of the property at the proposal, at second floor level. So the vast majority of the second floor level is is actually set away from the boundary. You can see what's been shown here in terms of the previous outline of the proposal. I think it's worth noting that the central stair core would be slightly higher than as shown here, because this section goes through the section which would basically be adjacent to the conservatory, rather than the section that would be adjacent to the sort of centre of the property where the kitchen window is. But what has been achieved here is that the proposal has been set slightly away from where the existing property was, proposal was. So it's been set further away, and obviously that height overall has come down by a full story, and in some parts comes down by even more, to be effectively just higher than a two-story property would normally be when it comes to the relationship with the conservatory. So if we look at the second floor plan here, you can see the broad outline of the property here, which is the edge of the property in purple here, which is number 2. You can see that the location of the conservatory, which was a key issue for the inspector, is now set away from any 3-story element quite significantly, with only the central core being the full 3-story, which has obviously come down from the 4-story element, affecting the side kitchen window. So therefore, on the basis of the proposal that's reduced it, the scale of the proposal, it is considered that the development would not have a significantly adverse impact on the living conditions of that property to warrant refusal of the application in officers' view. So overall, just to summarise, the proposal is recommended to defer and delegate for approval. This is subject to safeguarding conditions, but also the securing of a contribution towards the Strategic Access Management and Monitoring Plan. In the gap between the publishing of the agenda and the actual committee meeting, we have confirmed that the unilateral undertaking that has been submitted to us would be acceptable in securing the contribution. However, because to avoid changing the recommendation before members following the publishing of the agenda, it is still down to defer and delegate for approval. But we are happy that the application in front of us would secure that contribution. So taking account of the previous application and also what the proposal would do to redevelop a brownfield site, whilst mitigating the impact on neighbours through the changes that have been made, it is considered that the application should be recommended for defer and delegate for approval, subject to safeguarding conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Ian. And over to members. I'm going to put, first of all, recommend the officer's recommendation, which you've heard is to defer and delegate. With the Vice Chair, please second.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Right, members, I've got Councillor Orban. Councillor Orban. Has he pushed the wrong button again?
Probably.
I'll come back to Councillor Orban. Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, there was one. I mean, I didn't.
I'm not here.
I'll
come back to you, Steve.
I just wanted to ask, there's a couple of concerns raised by the neighbour and also Councillor Rattigan and Councillor Rogers before presentation, and that's about the concerns that are raised by the Kent Police. The Kent Police can't recommend approval for this due to their significant concerns about potential for crime. I just wondered if Mr. Livingston could comment on that.
Chair, if that's okay, I'll come back on that if that's all right.
Certainly.
Yeah. We've received 2 comments from the police about the development. One of them, which is the first one, outlined specific points about ensuring that designing out crime was included within the layout. What it raised is it raised certain concerns about they said planned layout, open layout at the rear of the site, as it lacked full natural surveillance, and then no details of perimeters of boundary treatment, currently recessed and flat roofs areas, which could be used for climbing, And then it's stated issues about visitor parking being able to be assessed, and then about open carports and secure areas for electric bikes, as well as lighting CCTV. Now, it's important to note that obviously previously the application did go to appeal, and obviously they looked at a very similar form of development with the parking areas that were shown and the access and entrance to the property, the main 3-story building, or as it was 4-story, around the back. The officer report outlines that to get surveillance over that access to the properties would require you to put windows in, and those windows would then overlook the neighbour at number 2 Ash Court. So that's why obviously it was considered that it would result in a harm to the living conditions of the neighbouring property. But in terms of the concerns of the police about things like natural surveillance and those issues, it's not considered that the development inherently would create crime to warrant a refusal on that basis. And indeed, the fact that this has been looked at and these comments, have been put forward before, but again, the inspector has specifically looked at particular points of refusal with regards to the impact on the neighbouring properties. It's not considered that there would be actually the creation of crime by virtue of the design of this proposal. And indeed, there are obviously secured areas for storage of vehicles in terms of the 4 houses. They've obviously got their own rear gardens, etc., and with obviously the areas inside the property as well. So we have taken into account of that. That they have raised other issues about site security during construction. Those are transitory issues, which would not be something that we would again warrant refusal of. But yeah, just to address those particular points with regards to the police.
Thank you, Ian. Come back to Councillor Orban now. Push the right button, Councillor Orban.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I don't know what happened there, Chair. Anyway, thank you. I think obviously the main concern for me was certainly the impact on the neighbouring property, and I think obviously that was what the planning inspector was concerned about on the previous application. From what I can see, Chair, I think those concerns that the inspector raised have been addressed. Whilst I still have a slight concern for the neighbours, but I think they have been addressed. And I think should we refuse this, Chair, I think we would lose on appeal. So for that reason, I would support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Orban. Councillor Towning.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Taking up what Councillor Garner just talked about, the actual crime problem. The Sportsman pub was very much a family pub. I know the pub, and the creation of a cafe and a micro bar, as you said, Ian, is going to invite the possibility of crime. And looking at the neighboring areas of that area, there are a lot of elderly people. There are a lot of lovely homes around there, and they become subjected to a potential crime element. In addition to that, looking at the actual design of the buildings, I think they're very much of a box type building, and it detracts, to me, it detracts from the environment of that area. And I find it hard to understand why it could not be a development that had some more promise and style to that area. So I've got mixed feelings about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Towning. I think all of us we can't presume what's going to happen. We've got to look at what's in front of us now. But I totally understand. I see a few hands raising now. Councillor Wright.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I've got mixed views about this development, but having visited somebody that lives along that street and had to park my car in the dark, I must admit I would feel a lot safer with that development there.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you, Councillor Wright. Yes, I was going to call you Councillor again, Mr. Livingston, but Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on the point with regards to the crime point, I think in terms of the way that it would be quantified about the replacement facility, I think it's important to say that obviously in consideration by, say, a planning inspector or indeed as the local planning authority, the fact that there was a public house present, and this is obviously being replaced by a facility that in part is the same use class, would not be able to be evidenced as the creation of an increase of crime or indeed noise and disturbance, because I think that is a point that has been raised, that obviously members are aware that we've had situations in the past where pubs have been changed into other uses, and any concerns about noise and disturbance, it doesn't necessarily result in a material change to have a different type of facility, but is effectively the same use class in this instance. So there wouldn't be any evidential basis that we could say that there was going to be an increase in noise and disturbance from the previous pub to the proposed as it's put forward. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ian. Councillor Alban, you wish to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that as much as I like Cedric, I do totally disagree with him about the issues of a small bar and a cafe that would cause it. I mean, there's hardly any traffic that goes down Sandwich Road now. There's only, if anything, it might be a bit of footfall from Cliff's End. The reason that the Sportsman pub closed down was because of the diversion around there, and no traffic coming along to the pub. So the likelihood of anybody pulling up there going to cause aggro down in Cliff's End is remote as far as I can see. I wouldn't say it wouldn't happen, but it's remote. So I don't see that as an issue, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Alban. I'd like to answer that, but I'm going to keep quiet. And I can't see anybody else wish to speak. So once again, I'm going to put this motion, which is defer and delegate to yourselves. Could I have the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. Members, I've got to go through this once again with you. For, against, or you're abstaining. So I'll call your name out. Councillor Coleman-Cook.
For.
Councillor Alban.
For.
Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Towning.
Against.
Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Patmore.
For.
Councillor Paul Moore.
For.
Councillor Rozeski.
For.
Councillor Scott.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And myself, I'm for as well. That is carried. Thank you, members. For that, I will get confirmation. It is. Thank you very much. That concludes public speaking, members, but I am for agenda item 5. I would just like to ask Mr. Livingston to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a planning enforcement update that I know that a number of members have been keen to get at planning committee. So the report that is in front of you gives a bit of a general introduction as well as an update with regards to complaints and enforcement notices. So just to run through a couple of different parts of this report. So it includes information about the enforcement process. So currently the way things are designated in terms of enforcement complaints is via a prioritization system, which is enshrined in our enforcement protocol of high priority and low priority. It then goes through the investigation procedures, so establishing whether or not a planning permission is required, then looks to seek to resolve matters without formal action, and then decide whether or not to take formal action or not. The report will then go through what formal action might look like, so it gives some examples of different types of enforcement notice or different types of breaches. And it also covers other elements that planning of work that planning enforcement carry out. In particular, draw your attention to matters of enforcing Section 106 agreements, which obviously members you see all the time in terms of the heads of terms that are in these committee reports, and they can often involve quite significant sums of money. And so it's to ensure that obviously we are enforcing those legal agreements to ensure that those payments are received and provided for community facilities, affordable housing, highways, etc. So point 3.0, 1 and 2 go through the complaints that were received in 2019 and 2020. So in 2019, there were 335 complaints received by the planning enforcement team, with 78 of them that were put forward as high priority, and 330 in 2020, with 74 designated as high priority. The report provides a list and the enforcement notice register for 2019-2020, which goes through 26 notices that were served in that time. And then the report talks about the enforcement review. So as the report mentions, this is more of a matter for tomorrow night at overview and scrutiny, where I'll be giving a similar presentation with regards to a planning enforcement review that's been requested. But internally, there is a review that's just beginning, which is a 6-month process following an ombudsman decision, which wanted a bit of a review of our current processes. So we've got 3 stages to the review that are going to be going on. One is a general review looking at the protocol, as mentioned, and also then looking at process mapping, the sort of complainant journey almost to go through each stage. It's then going to look at the use of systems. So it's a combination of how we record complaints, how potentially whether or not we can automate any systems to speed up the processing of those complaints, as well as potentially looking at how much the website could do in terms of providing information, but also automatically filtering certain information and providing updates on complaints and what status they are at. And then the last stage would be looking at whether or not we need to define sort of any further service standards, or whether or not there's any a review of resourcing, and whether or not there's a business case to be put forward for increased resourcing. So that's just a quick canter through the report, really. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. I do note, and not a surprise here, if there are any questions, because this report is to be noted. Councillor Orban, there's a surprise.
Yeah, well, it was only to thank Mr. Livingston for bringing this to two members, because it's always been the Cinderella part of planning for members, and members don't normally get involved in planning enforcement, and it's a very, very important part of the planning process, and without that, the decisions that we make at planning committee may not always get built in accordance with what we've approved, and the conditions that we ask to be put on are not always complied with. And so you will see from the 2019-2020 list of enforcement that there are all kinds of different actions that are taking place, including non-compliance with conditions. And I know Councillor Garner was very concerned about that. So I think I'm very grateful for you, for Mr. Libby bringing this to us. And I have no further comment to make. And thank you, Chair. I will make one last thing, Chair. I know it's been a long journey to get it here for about 18 months, but I'm pleased it's here in the end. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. And I agree with what you said. It is a very important part of the role we all play. Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. And I echo a lot of what Councillor Orban says. It is obviously a very important role within planning enforcement, because it's all very well us passing a lot of conditions, if they're not enforced, then they're not really worth the paper they're written on a lot of the time. So the enforcement team worked very hard during the year, and I thank them for that. And I can see they've been very, very busy, covering 330 enforcement actions. I've got a couple of questions. One, how big is the enforcement team? Just so as we all know, how many people are there in the enforcement team? And how do those 330 enforcement actions come to their notice?
Ian, was you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the enforcement team consists of the planning enforcement officer, which is I'm gonna name them, which is Nikki Burford, and the planning enforcement assistant, which is Leanne Boyd, and I manage them both sort of directly. So the enforcement team consists of 2 full-time staff members, but obviously they do draw in work from the rest of the planning applications team. So planning officers do assist with certain elements of planning enforcement work, which includes supporting them at appeals against enforcement notices, providing reasons for notices to be served, and those sorts of things, as well as linked to the technical team and the conditions officer and the various different staff members. In terms of how we get the complaints, predominantly they are emailed to planning.enforcement@thanet.gov.uk. We do require a sort of written complaint record to be taken down. We do still take complaints over the phone, but mainly it's via that submission. There is an ability through the council's website to log an enforcement complaint as well, which then automates an email. But we get enforcement complaints from various sources, including obviously we sometimes get stuff through the comms team, through social media if someone's raised something. We obviously get it from individual planning officers when out on site if they see something. We also get them from ward councillors as well, which obviously come into us as well. But it's a reactive service, so we are a complaints-based service fundamentally, but we do obviously sometimes create the investigations as well as officers.
Thank you, Ian. I do see that Councillor Moore is there, but I will come back to Councillor Garner.
No, thank you. Yeah, but I realise this is going to be covered in a little bit more detail tomorrow night at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So I don't want to get into a big discussion about it, especially after a 2 hours plus planning committee meeting. The key thing I wanted to understand was about the reactiveness of the team, how it's a reactive team rather than obviously because there's only 2 of them. They're very difficult for them to be proactive, as in going and checking that developers, especially on larger sites, are actually following the conditions that have been passed by planning officers and or by the planning committee. But thank you, and I'm sure I'll look forward to further discussion tomorrow evening.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Councillor Moore, Paul Moore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ian, for letting me know that I can now come to your door and complain fervently to you when I don't get an answer from Nikki or her assistant. I think they do a fantastic job. I think the team is woefully understaffed with the number of retrospective complaints they get. And I think that's something that might need to be addressed in the future. But more importantly, the problem I've found when reporting issues is there doesn't seem to be a seamless and transparent way of seeing how these things are progressing. So would there be a facility that we have somewhere on the TDC portal where councillors can log in and see how things are progressing and at what stage they are? Because obviously trying to get hold of Nikki and her colleagues sometimes when they're out and about is quite difficult. We don't want to pester you all the time because you're busy anyway. But if there was a live document we could see how things are progressing, would be really advantageous to us, because we can then see that. And if we see something that's not happening, then maybe we can then contact you and say, oh, by the way, what's happening with this one? Because I haven't seen anything going ahead of it. And that would be a much easier way. And you wouldn't get pestered by miserable councillors like me trying to find out what's going on. Thank you.
Yeah, you said it, Councillor Moore. Ian.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And the second stage of the enforcement review was looking at the use of systems. The current system we use for our planning database, not to get too techy, is a system called Uniform, which we update and has all the details of our complaints that we've received in and that have been logged on that system. We will be investigating the potential for whether or not there's a similar type of way that we can make complaints live as we do with planning applications, not to provide any details, obviously, that it's a very, very important fundamental principle of enforcement that complainants are to be kept confidential, but to actually give an idea so that not just councillors, but members of the public would be able to get an update about a complaint that either they or may have been raised in the local area about what status that is at. The whole purpose of the review is to work out and scope out whether or not there is a possibility of doing that or not, or if not, how we can better communicate with complainants and indeed with ward councillors to be able to provide an update which doesn't rely on an individual officer typing an email. So that is one of, a particular point that we are looking at.
Thank you for that, Ian. I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this, I'm going to Councillor Orban, but I know time is moving on, but this may have been tried a number of years ago. I'm not saying it failed. I think obviously with staffing issues and so on, but I think a point's been taken here, and if a very good point, and if it can be looked into.
Chairman, if I can come back just purely from my own point, obviously things have changed so much from one point of having a team of 4 officers reduced to 2.
Yeah.
And then having to try and deal with the same issues across the island, and the same amount of complaints. The complaints averaged from between, as Ian's just said, 300 to 400, sometimes more than that.
Yeah.
And it's prioritization of what you can do, and of course it's trying to have the time in which to do everything in. I was always an advocate of having extra staff, because I think there's ways that it can be done. You could have a planning condition enforcement colleague. You may have a full-time planning enforcement, another full-time planning enforcement officer. However, that's for Ian and officers to decide the best way forward. It's not for councillors to do that.
No.
And also, we mustn't forget as councillors, where is the money coming from? Because as we all know, we haven't got any. So it's a very difficult thing for Ian to try and get the resources from out of his own budget, and they would have to come corporately. So if it comes corporately, then something's got to be cut somewhere else. So that's something that's got to be taken into account. And I look forward to Ian's report coming forward, and I'll be at overview and scrutiny tomorrow night, as I've been invited along for another reason. But thank you, Chair, for asking me. And I wish you all a fond good night, because
thank you, Councillor Orban, for the advice there. And yes, obviously, Councillor Orban is aware in his previous life what he used to do, and hence the advice. Members, that report is to be noted. I know we lost, had to leave Councillor George Zeski earlier. He goes along with the report, so it is to be noted. And that does bring at shall we say, 8 o'clock, this meeting to a close. I thank Ian Livingston and the other officers for their time, and members yourselves. I know it's been a long meeting. Just very quickly, there's the possibility that there will be 2 planning meetings in March. One of them would be 4 weeks from today, the 17th, and more than likely the 31st. So please keep that in mind. Obviously, you'll be notified. And that's it. I won't keep you any longer. And thank you very much for your attendance tonight. And again, very good debate on the issues tonight. Thank you.